In the heart of a frosty London evening, a biting wind swept through narrow cobblestone streets as delicate snowflakes fell like whispers of forgotten dreams. In a dimly lit alley behind shuttered shops, an old sedan, its paint faded and edges worn, offered scant shelter from the cold. Inside that cramped vehicle, Emily, a homeless mother with tired eyes, sat huddled against the icy interior. Her infant, Oliver, lay swaddled in a patchwork of threadbare blankets, his small face half hidden by the layers yet exuding an innocent vulnerability. The car's windows, veiled with frost, blurred the harsh world outside, creating a fragile cocoon where the echoes of distant city life felt muted against the pounding of her anxious heart. That same evening, Ryan Gosling had just completed a routine stop at a local grocery store. Dressed in a long, dark coat and a snug beanie pulled low to shield him from the biting wind, he stepped into the damp night with a quiet determination. The urban landscape, alive with the low hum of traffic and the occasional murmur of late-night pedestrians, suddenly seemed to slow as his practiced eyes caught sight of the solitary sedan parked beneath a flickering street lamp. Something about the scene, the scattered remnants of grocery bags near the car, the steady, sorrowful posture of a woman who moved with guarded caution, stirred a deep empathy in him. Approaching slowly, so as not to startle her fragile sense of safety, Ryan called out softly, "Excuse me." His voice, warm and gentle against the backdrop of the howling wind, broke through the silence. Emily startled, her eyes widening in both apprehension and curiosity as she clutched a battered bag of groceries to her chest. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice trembling like the leaves outside. The tone was tentative, a mixture of cautious hope and hard-won mistrust born from years of overlooked pleas. "I noticed you might need a hand," Ryan replied, his expression earnest. "I saw you out here, and I wondered if you needed anything at all." The sincerity in his words seemed to momentarily push back the chill that had long wrapped around her heart. After a pause heavy with unsaid stories, Emily's voice dropped to a near whisper. I need milk," she admitted, each syllable weighted with vulnerability and the pain of countless nights spent in isolation. Without a trace of hesitation, Ryan's eyes softened. "Just wait here for a moment," he said, offering a small smile before turning briskly toward the nearby supermarket. Minutes later, he returned carrying a modest bag filled with essentials, a container of powdered milk, a pack of diapers, and a bundle of baby wipes. Each item was a lifeline, a small beacon of hope amidst the surrounding desolation. As he extended the bag toward her, Emily's hands trembled as if touching something sacred. "Thank you," she managed, her voice barely audible above the whistle of the wind. Standing beneath the gentle glow of a street lamp, Ryan leaned in slightly. "I'm here if you need anything else," he said, his tone carrying a promise without imposing any obligation. His presence was a quiet assurance that kindness still existed in a world that had long seemed indifferent. As he turned to leave, the soft crunch of his footsteps on the snowy pavement mingled with the city's nocturnal sounds, leaving behind a lingering warmth in the cold air. Emily watched him depart, clutching the bag of supplies close to her chest. For a brief, almost imperceptible moment, the world outside, the biting cold, the indifferent glare of passing strangers, seemed to recede. In its place, a fragile hope took root. She looked down at Oliver, whose gentle rhythmic breathing offered a silent promise of tomorrow. Outside, as the night deepened and more snowflakes joined the quiet ballet of the winter sky, Emily allowed herself to imagine a future where small acts of kindness might help mend the broken pieces of her life. Later that night, as the city's distant lights flickered like stars in a vast, indifferent universe, Emily sat quietly in the sedan, her gaze fixed on the handwritten note left by Ryan. Its simple message read, "You are not alone. I'm here for you." Those few words resonated deeply, echoing like a soft lullaby against the harshness of her reality. Each line of the note seemed to promise that even in the darkest, coldest moments, there was someone willing to share a bit of warmth and care. In the silence that followed, as the snowfall continued its gentle descent and the city carried on in its relentless pace, Emily's heart, long resigned to solitude, felt a stirring of new possibility. The small bag of milk and diapers, the note with its quiet promise, and Ryan's compassionate smile had all converged to create a moment of clarity. It was a moment where she dared to believe that perhaps, even in a world that often forgot the forgotten, a single act of kindness could light a path to renewal. The next morning, a thin gray light seeped through the grimy windows of a rundown motel room where Emily found herself waking with a sense of disorientation. The previous night's encounter still lingered in her mind. The gentle tone of a stranger's voice, the small bag of supplies, and that simple note declaring she was not alone. As she sat up slowly, the chill of the early hours wrapped around her like a reminder of the harshness outside. Oliver slept quietly in a makeshift cot by the door, his small chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. The memory of the kind man's words stirred something fragile within her, a hope she had long buried beneath layers of despair and loneliness. After a moment of quiet reflection, Emily gathered the few belongings she had and wrapped a worn blanket around herself. Determined to face the day, she stepped out into the biting air, her footsteps echoing on the cracked pavement. The city was already stirring, its usual hum of activity punctuated by the distant sound of buses and murmured conversations from passers-by. Despite the chill, a faint warmth glimmered in her heart, a spark ignited by that unexpected act of kindness. Emily decided to take a walk, not knowing exactly where her feet would lead her, but feeling that she needed to clear her mind and perhaps find a hint of direction. The streets, still slick with remnants of last night's frost, reflected the pale morning light. She wandered aimlessly for a time, passing familiar landmarks that now seemed to carry a different meaning. With every step, memories of hardship and loss mingled with the budding sense of possibility that Ryan's intervention had awakened. The recollection of his steady gaze and the sincerity in his voice lent her courage to continue moving forward, even when the weight of her past threatened to pull her back. At a small corner cafe that barely managed to open its doors in time for the morning rush, Emily paused to watch the world begin anew. Through the fogged glass, she observed the routine of people ordering coffee, sharing brief moments of connection, and starting their days with quiet determination. For a long time, she had felt invisible among them, a ghost passing through life unnoticed. But now, the gentle kindness she had experienced made her wonder if perhaps she, too, could rejoin the tapestry of ordinary lives, woven with threads of resilience and hope. The cafe's warmth and the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee brought a smile to her tired face. After a brief hesitation, she mustered the courage to step inside. The soft murmur of conversation and the clink of porcelain provided a soothing backdrop as she sat at a small table near the window. In that moment, the world outside, with its biting cold and indifferent shadows, seemed a distant memory. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Emily allowed herself to believe that she might have a future beyond the isolation of her car and the relentless struggle for survival. As the morning unfolded, Emily's thoughts drifted back to the note left by the kind stranger. The words echoed in her mind, a constant reminder that she was not meant to endure her hardships alone. Despite her reservations and the deep-seated fear of being vulnerable again, she decided to reach out for help in ways she had never dared before. Quietly, she penned a few tentative words on a scrap of paper, expressing her gratitude and a cautious willingness to accept more support if it were offered. It was a small step, a fragile act of trust that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. Later that day, while wandering through a modest community center that offered free meals and support services, Emily noticed a familiar face in the crowd. A man with kind eyes and an air of quiet determination was speaking with a volunteer near a bulletin board adorned with flyers and notices. His presence stirred something inside her, a sense of recognition that went beyond mere physical appearance. It was as if the memory of that previous night had brought her full circle to this moment of possibility. Without fully understanding why, she found herself drawn to the conversation. The man's calm demeanor and genuine concern seemed to invite her to step out of the shadows of her own life. For several minutes, she lingered at the periphery, listening to the conversation about available services, job training, and temporary housing. The details were foreign and yet deeply reassuring, a world of support that she had long believed was closed off to her. As she listened, her mind began to piece together a tentative vision of a future where she could rebuild, not just survive. The man, noticing her quiet presence, offered a gentle smile and a nod, as if acknowledging her silent plea for inclusion. That evening, as Emily returned to the modest motel room that had become her temporary sanctuary, she felt a subtle shift within. The overwhelming weight of her circumstances had not vanished, but there was now a glimmer of possibility that made the darkness seem less impenetrable. She sat by the window, cradling Oliver as the city outside hummed with the promise of a new day. In that silent moment, she vowed to herself that she would take the small steps needed to change her life, no matter how tentative they might be. The kindness of a stranger had shown her that hope could be found even in the most unexpected places, and as she looked into Oliver's peaceful sleep, she resolved to embrace the future with the quiet determination of someone who had finally found a reason to believe in the possibility of tomorrow. Over the following days, Emily's life began to shift imperceptibly as she embraced the promise of a new beginning. Each morning, she rose with a tentative resolve, bolstered by the memory of that night when a stranger's compassion had stirred something long dormant within her. With Oliver tucked securely in her arms, she set out into the waking city with a cautious optimism that grew stronger with every step. The streets, though still cold and unyielding, now held a quiet potential rather than an overwhelming threat. She ventured toward a modest community center where warm meals and quiet support were offered to those who had been forgotten by the bustling city. Inside the center's welcoming space, Emily found herself surrounded by others whose eyes carried stories of loss and resilience. While she had once felt invisible amidst the daily rush of life, here she was met with understanding smiles and gentle nods, small gestures that affirmed her presence and worth. Over time, these brief interactions wove a fragile network of hope around her, one that began to counter the isolation that had once defined her existence. Emily gradually found herself drawn to the center's various programs, participating in job training workshops and support groups where voices, once muffled by despair, were given room to speak of renewal and determination. She listened intently as counselors shared stories of survival and reinvention, absorbing every word like a lifeline. With each passing day, the bitterness of her past softened, replaced by the quiet strength of a woman reclaiming her identity. Even as challenges persisted, moments of self-doubt, the nagging fear of rejection, and the lingering pain of loss, she discovered a resilience that surprised her. Slowly, Emily began to draft a plan for rebuilding her life, one small step at a time. The community center not only offered practical help, but also reawakened a sense of purpose that had long been buried under layers of hardship. In the gentle evenings, as the city's lights flickered against the darkening sky, Emily returned to her temporary shelter with a mind abuzz with new possibilities. There were days when she ventured out to explore local job opportunities, mustering the courage to attend interviews and speak about her past without shame. The memory of Ryan's kindness and the words on his handwritten note became her mantra, a reminder that she was not alone in this journey. Even when setbacks occurred, a rejection here, a missed opportunity there, she clung to the belief that every moment of hardship was paving the way toward a better future for both herself and Oliver. At times, as she cradled her sleeping son on a quiet park bench or sat in the warmth of a modest cafe, Emily allowed herself to dream. She envisioned a life where the car that had once been her only home was replaced by a small apartment of her own, where the relentless winter of her past would give way to the gentle promise of spring. One crisp morning, as pale light broke through the remnants of a winter storm, Emily met a woman at the community center who had once faced similar trials and had found stability through dedicated support and employment. That encounter ignited a spark within her, a tangible proof that change was not only possible but within reach. With renewed determination, she enrolled in a short training course focused on practical skills and basic computer literacy, hoping to open the door to more sustainable work. The lessons were challenging, yet every small victory, every new word learned, and every skill acquired reinforced her belief that she was capable of redefining her life. Her journey was far from over, and though the road ahead was uncertain, the light of possibility shone steadily on her path. In quiet moments at night, as she reviewed the day's progress and planned for tomorrow, Emily would glance at a small, framed copy of the note that Ryan had left her, a constant reminder of the power of compassion and the impact a single act of kindness can have. That note, with its simple declaration that she was not alone, had become the cornerstone of her transformation. It guided her through the long, lonely hours and inspired her to reach out, to share her own story, and even to extend a hand of help to others in need. With each passing day, the harsh edges of her former life softened, replaced by the slow, steady rhythm of rebuilding and hope. And as the city around her continued its ceaseless dance of light and shadow, Emily held on to the belief that every new sunrise was a chance to start again, a chance to build a life defined not by loss, but by resilience, connection, and the enduring strength of the human spirit.